Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has a question for Democrats tonight. As to the House of Representatives, he asks, if you believe this complaint has put the public in grave danger, don't you have an obligation to vote to launch an impeachment inquiry? Americans deserve to see where you stand and evaluate your judgment. Joining me now, host of Left Coast News, Ethan Behrman, and Fox.
I think those are pretty good points.
News contributor Guy Benson, welcome to you both.
Hey, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so to this idea of having a vote on the floor, this is very interesting from the New York Times, and they talk about the squad here and saying when they speak, everybody listens how the freshmen are shaping this impeachment push. It goes on to say the few Democrats who oppose impeachment can ill afford to take a vote on the House floor on whether to open an impeachment inquiry, and Ms. Pelosi does not plan to hold one, according to lawmakers and senior party officials. Guy, why not hold a vote? If it's time, it's time.
Because they're playing games on this. I happen to believe that there are some very concerning developments in this whole Ukraine situation. I'm not sitting here saying the president's done nothing wrong. I've argued the opposite in a number of cases. But if the Democrats actually believe their own rhetoric, that the president has committed this grave sin against the republic in misusing his power on foreign policy for his own personal interests, then it shouldn't just be some words in front of cameras from the Speaker of the House. It should be an actual vote to get this process going. But because they are so interested in telling part of their base, yes, we're pursuing this, while protecting some of the moderate members who are still squirmish about it, it kind of seems like perhaps they're not as serious as their rhetoric would suggest.
Well, and this opens a whole lot of other questions. Mark Thiessen, writing in the Washington Post about this, Democrats sprinting ahead of the evidence. He says, the irony is, thanks to the Democrats' impeachment push, the president is going to get his investigation of Joe Biden's son, except it won't be carried out by Ukraine, but by the U.S. Congress. So, Ethan, if they're going to dig into all of these things and all of these allegations, is Biden likely to be caught up in this? He's having to talk about it a lot on the campaign trail, and that can only be good news for his competitors out there in the primary.
Well, I don't know that this is all that bad for Joe Biden. I mean, I know I've heard some people talk about the fact that this even could be pushed by certain competitors of Biden's in the race. I've heard that from some people. But I don't believe that this is a big problem for Biden. And back to what Guy just said, I mean, that's...
Personally, I think that guy shared that narrative with other people instead of actually hearing it from other people.
The reality of whipping votes is what's happening right now. That's giving Speaker Pelosi the time that she needs to whip the votes that they need for the Democrats to have the majority to actually vote on the impeachment on the floor. They need that time to clarify some of this evidence. Yeah, I mean, if I'm Joe Biden, I don't want to be talking about this right now either. However, he didn't go to a foreign powers leader, withhold aid, and say, look into my political rival if you want your military aid, which we should be giving them without qualms because of our
Ethan,
1994
you know
treaty.
what people are pointing to, though. Him on camera more than once saying, I went to those guys and told them, you're not getting your $1 billion loan guarantee unless you get rid of this investigator, this prosecutor. Now, there's been a lot of talk about whether that prosecutor was a good guy or a bad guy, but he was investigating a company on which Hunter Biden sat on the board. That's something Biden's going to have to talk about.
There's no question that there are appearances there of potential conflict, but the difference is the anti-corruption people in Ukraine are on record as recently as May of this year saying that the reason Biden went there was because of other people in the State Department saying that the lead prosecutor was not prosecuting corruption. So it was at the behest of our State Department that the then vice president went and said, look, you have a problem here. You're not going after corruption. This is one of the contingencies of our aid.
Let me bring Guy in here because, Guy, that's what Rudy Giuliani is saying tonight in his own defense, that the State Department there were officials there encouraging him to have these conversations with Ukrainian officials.
Yeah, I have no idea exactly what Rudy's doing at this point because he's the president's personal lawyer, but he's kind of acting on behalf of the country in certain ways, but he's talking about the interests of his client, which is the president, which is not the same thing as the country. I think the whole Rudy aspect of this is confusing and seems to get sometimes more confusing as we watch him do interviews for 15 minutes at a time. It's fascinating to watch. It is not, I think, elucidating much information for me that is persuasive or reassuring in either direction. But let's just be clear. the fact that President Trump has some very serious questions to answer and some real criticisms to respond to doesn't mean that the Bidens get a free pass either. Whether or not you believe that this prosecutor in Ukraine was a bad guy and he was kind of universally condemned as corrupt, having Joe Biden as the point person over in Ukraine pressuring the government on that front when his son has been hired by this Ukrainian gas company for $50,000 a month with no expertise whatsoever, when Biden's fingerprints are all over this issue, that unto itself, I think, smells very fishy, as does the fact that Joe Biden was asked, did you ever discuss these matters with your son, foreign business enterprises? He said no, and it turns out that wasn't true. So we can actually focus on two balls at the same time.
We'll see what Congress chooses to do. In the meantime, Ethan and Guy, great to have you both. Thank you.
Very interesting report. I don't. It's just so tired of people just going after Trump for no fucking reasons. You know, we can't focus on the greater details because of all this freaking drama out there. You know, like, what the hell? I think Homeboy's freaking blasting his music. The one that freaking gets privileges here too. Take care, be safe, be good, stay strong, love y'all.